Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Great to be with you. Wow. We just finished recording a session with Gavin Brauer. So Gavin's a certified EOS implementer, but also, owns a business and has owned several different businesses throughout his career. And man, I was just telling Gavin before we closed off that I've done hundreds of different podcasts and in studio interviews over the past 12 to 15 years. And this is certainly one of the most memorable conversations that I've had. Gavin really got vulnerable. We even talk about the word vulnerability, what that means, but he got vulnerable. And actually, the conversation went so long that we're going to end up cutting this into two different episodes. But man, talk about a lot of different things, but really mostly on just personal reflection, what it's like to be an entrepreneur, what it's like to be a business leader, how this road can be lonely at times, and how we deal with that. So I hope you get a lot of good nuggets out of this conversation. Here we go.
Welcome to the Partnernomics Show, where industry thought leaders discuss the hottest topics in partnerships, ecosystems, and innovation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. It's great to be with you. Today we are joined by Gavin Brauer from Toronto. Gavin, how are things going today?
Hey, Mark. So great to be with you.
Man, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I really enjoyed the last chat that we had. So this will be a little bit of potentially a little different spin than what we typically, will go through in a podcast, as we had chatted about. Lots of different topics. You have a cool background, lots of different work that you have done, lots of different work that you are doing. So we'll see how long this one goes, man. If it runs a bit long, we may just chop it into two podcasts and do kind of a part one, part two, if that'd be all right with you.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm actually looking forward to this. So thank you for having me on.
So, Gavin, if you wouldn't mind, for those folks that are not familiar with you or don't follow you, would you mind just giving us a little bit of background of Gavin and kind of where you're at? What was the upbringing? How'd you get involved in business? And what kind of things are you doing now?
Yeah, so I grew up the son of an entrepreneur, and I remember being in high school and we had somebody come in to talk to us about career planning and all that stuff. One of the things they said was that kids are often likely to kind of grow up and want to do the same things as their parents. They gave the examples of doctors and lawyers and that stuff. So my dad was an entrepreneur, and it's not surprising that I became an entrepreneur.
That's also, I can totally relate with that. Both of my parents are lifelong business owners, finally retired now, but I half jokingly say that I was in high school before I realized most people work for somebody else. They're not self-employed. It's like, what does this mean? What's this job stuff? My parents, they own their own businesses. But
Yeah.
yeah, super cool.
Yeah, for me, I've always had a personal need for freedom. Freedom in how I get to spend my time and where I spend my energy. And that is one of the gifts of entrepreneurship is we often we have the freedom to choose what we follow. At the same time, there's a lot of things that are very constricting about being an entrepreneur where you lose that freedom. And that has caused me a lot of heartache and heartburn over the years.
Yeah, so I didn't mention this earlier, but Gavin is a certified EOS implementer. Obviously, the folks that are listening to our show are very familiar with EOS, and we're obviously huge fans. Have been talking about EOS for about the last decade that we've been doing podcasts and different interviews. So, Gavin, let's talk about like your experience in being an entrepreneur. Let's talk about life before you became an EOS implementer. What was kind of your first foray into business, and then kind of what were some of those early lessons learned?
Yeah, the first business I ever owned was a business that I bought. Um, it was a company where I bought half the company in partnership with my dad, and had another partner who owned the other half. We distributed janitorial supplies, food service supplies, and industrial supplies. And about 2 weeks after buying the business, I knew I'd made a horrible mistake. And I spent about 2 years working to get my money and my family's money back, and was very lucky that I found somebody who helped me do that. And that was probably the single hardest experience of my life.
Hmm.
Definitely from a business perspective.
What was it about the business or the situation or the financials or the time, the not preparedness? Why was it a bad choice?
All of that. So the reason it was a bad choice was um I I did it for the wrong reasons. My passion at the time was to get into the outdoor sports business. That was something I'd wanted since I was a kid, and I had tried many, many different ways to do that, buying bike shops, buying outdoor clothing shops. Um, I had a deal that fell through to invest in a wholesale bike part distributor. So I'd come at it from a whole bunch of different angles, and everything kept coming to a dead end. And at that time, this opportunity to buy this business kind of came to me. And I was like, you know what? This dream I had is not going anywhere. So I'm going to give that up and I'm going to go buy this quote unquote safe business. And I betrayed my soul and I paid the price for that.
So let's kind of dig into that one a little bit deeper, and then also kind of dig into kind of the trials, tribulations of being an entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
Partnernomics is business number 6 for me, and man, everything you said is very true. I love the independence. I worked in corporate America for 15 years, 13 years with a Fortune 50 at Sprint, and had the golden handcuffs on. But I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so I had some side hustle going, and I had one. It was a wild story. I would call it definitely a failure, but I was just too dumb to realize what I had at the time. But man, so many people, right? They look back and they say, Mark, he has his own business. He can take vacation whenever he wants. I want to own my own business. I see these other entrepreneurs, business owners, they make so much money. I want to do that. You definitely take the good with the bad, don't you?
You do. Actually, one of the things that I don't think is talked about enough is entrepreneurs are one of the highest risk categories for mental illness and suicide. Um, it is it can be a very crushing experience. And that was the hardest thing in my first business was dealing with that pressure. Mostly the pressure of what I knew I was capable, what I wanted, and the reality of my situation, which was not living up to either of those things.
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, obviously, it literally means a willingness to take risks. That's the definition of the term itself, and and we certainly do that as entrepreneurs. I'm sure that you and I have. I can think of dozens of conversations I've had over the past 15 years with entrepreneurs that it didn't work out so well. And they literally mortgaged their house and did different things to get businesses going. And for whatever reason, it was not successful. And they lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases, if not more. And man, just the guilt
Yeah.
that comes from that. It can really be crushing. Fortunately, my situation that I had was nowhere near that amount of money, but I still felt a lot of guilt, and it frankly paralyzed me from an entrepreneurial perspective. It paralyzed me for several years before I jumped back in the entrepreneurial game.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't think it actually has to do with the absolute amount of money. At least from my experience. So in my first business, the amount of money that I risked and my family risked, while it was significant, it wasn't, I didn't mortgage my house. Um, it would sting, but it wasn't anything that would really change anybody's life in my family if we lost the money. At the same time, the sense of failure was something that I could not bear. And it was an embarrassment. It was just this sense of feeling stuck and almost hopeless.
Mm.
Um, and as if it was my own fault. And it was the emotional side of it. The money kind of represented that, but I think there's something deeper that we experience when we're not achieving what we know we're capable of or what we want. And I think it's that sense of failure, which causes us to go into a deep place. And I would take it one step further is a lot of times people would tell me, Gavin, you're a pretty humble guy. And in a lot of ways I am. What I've come to recognize recently is the self-doubt and the depression that came from this scenario was caused by a lack of humility, which doesn't make sense on the surface because it seemed like I was pretty humble. I was acknowledging that I wasn't doing what I wanted. It wasn't going well. I took ownership of my situation, and in some ways I was humble, but I also was very not humble in not being able to accept I got myself in a bad situation, do what I can to get out of it and move on. And so I think that, yeah, all of this stuff is really, really hard stuff to deal with.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on something about, I guess just different people deal with things in different ways, right? We all kind of have our friends that we don't think their heartbeat gets much above 30 or 40. It's like, man, they just can't get rattled. They would be ideal maybe for entrepreneurs, but I was pretty damn high drive, man, when I was a kiddo. Again, like both my parents lifelong business owners. I mean, so it was like, I mean, run a business can't be that difficult, that challenging. Graduated high school as a junior, went directly into college, had success there, bachelor's degree, master's degree, was in the Marines, promoted very, very quickly, went to officer candidate school. I I had never dealt with failure, and even had like two businesses that that were good and successful. The first one paid for my first 2 years of college. I sold it and went full time into college. And wow, it was business number three for me, man. It was a slap in the face. And I think this is kind of what I'm hearing you say. What alluding to is this was the first time that I'd really dealt with failure, and I didn't realize like how difficult and how like big and broad and wide business is. There's so many things to know. There's so many things to learn. And there isn't a single book or a single course. I had a master's degree in economics, studied economics for 6 years. I mean, shit, I had taught as a graduate student. I was clueless whenever it came to like running a business. But then I look back at both of my parents and I'm like, I've I've got to be able to do this. And to your point, I felt the weight. I mean, that's how I would describe it. It just feels like thousands of pounds on you. And it was really the kind of the self shame, I guess, because I got my family into this. And yeah, to the point that you made, it wasn't about the money. I mean, I could have totally just washed the money and it had been gone and it wouldn't have made a significant difference. But man, psychologically, dude, it tormented me. Like I said, it paralyzed me for years as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I think the word you just used, shame, is the key word here. Um, I know I felt a lot of that and I see it in others. And it's a hard emotion to deal with, probably one of the hardest.
So how did you come out of it? What's the
It,
process? Who helped you? Like, I mean, because it is a process, right?
yeah, I think the start of it was I was in this in a shop in Ellicottville, New York, which is a place that I love to spend time. I love to ski and ride there. And there's a shop, they sell these cards and they have cards that are like quotes. And there was a Winston Churchill, I think it's Winston Churchill, and I bought this card. It said, "When you're going through hell, keep going." And there was a couple of other ones. So I had these cards that I used to keep on my desk. That was kind of the first sign of inspiration. After that, I got very lucky in that I met somebody who helped me sell the business and get my family's money back. Um, and what I was most proud of was we had secured jobs for everybody except one employee who worked for us. Um, Everybody else was given a job offer. Not everybody took it, but everybody was given an offer. The guy who didn't get the offer actually had another job before the deal closed.
So he didn't get
So
hurt anyway.
yeah. um, so that was that. I then decided that if I'm going to do this entrepreneurial thing again, I am going to follow my passion and what I truly want. And at the time, what I wanted was to fulfill my dream of either manufacturing my own bike or my own skis. I decided to go into the bike industry because I thought it was a less bad business than the ski industry. I think I might have been wrong on that. The bike industry is quite possibly the most complex industry I've ever seen. Um, it's a very, very difficult industry.
Yeah, tell it's one industry I know zero about. What did you learn? What did you try to do? What's the business?
Yeah, so I own a company called KindHuman Bicycles. We are a bike shop in Toronto, and we make our own brand of bikes. Um, so what makes the industry so hard is it's a relatively small industry. It's an industry built on passion as opposed to professionalism. So a lot of people who work in the industry have followed their passion, and you don't get a lot of people with a the level of experience you get for people in the bike industry is very different that you would find in like a law firm, for example. People go to university and you become a quote unquote lawyer, and their ways of doing things. Whereas in the bike industry, it's that passion which comes first. So given that it's a small industry, it's a passion industry. There seems to you don't get a um, you get all this kind of conflict that comes out of that. It's also incredibly complex in terms of like the number of SKUs as a bike shop, never mind as a bike manufacturer, that you have to manage is it's in the thousands for a little bike shop. Um, then you have the complexity in terms of your customer segments where not all right like riders are very different. A roadie is very different to a mountain. Somebody likes to ride mountain bikes, who's different from gravel, who's different from cyclocross, triathlon. Then in the lifestyle category, you've got like 12 different lifestyle categories, which are all lifestyle bikes. So it's like so the complexity of it combined with the size makes it really challenge. And then add on the fact that it's seasonal, and it's like the perfect storm.
Super
So
interesting, man. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, so that's kind of so I got in the bike industry. So going back to how I climbed out of hell was step one, I found somebody to help me sell the business and help fix the problem. Going to first who, then what, or who not how, which is a Dan Sullivan concept, and a great book, was I found the person who knew what to do in order to solve the problem that I had. I then committed to following what I really wanted, and I got into the bike industry and I made that happen. And then I was at a point where I now got to this point where I got everything I want in life. I got a great wife, I've got amazing kids, good home, my kids are at good schools, I own a bike company. Like I've like checked off just about everything on my checklist, and I was still miserable. And it was at that point where I hired a coach. And for 7 or 8 years now, I've been meeting every other week with her. Her name is Janelle Smiley. Um, she has been amazing for me. And every other week, I meet with her and I work on myself and I work on my inner world. And over the years, I've slowly climbed out of hell. And then once I got back to what I call baseline, then it was about, okay, now how high can I climb? How much personal fulfillment and peace can I get inside, regardless of what's going on the outside? And I just committed to it, and I work on it every day.
Yeah,
So
Gavin,
that
I'd like
was,
to like I think that's so important. So a lot of time I'm just reflecting back on just folks that I've chatted with, and I think all of us that we've had mentors. We think back of just it scares me to think of where I would be, or what I would not have accomplished had I not had some really critical mentors in my life. And so I've tried to be really cognizant of being a mentor to others and lending that ear for them. I can say from personal experience, different folks that I've talked to, entrepreneurs and not, they're running through some tough times in life, and I think maybe the natural tendency is to go into the shell, go into the cave, kind of stay at home, stay in your
yeah.
bedroom, just detract from the world. And it's been my experience that's the worst thing to do.
Yeah, and a
Yeah,
lot
I'd
of
like to kind of
a
dig
lot
into
of times,
this.
yeah, a lot of times, like the advice we get from other people in our society in general is close off. So you're not experience success, you're experience what feels like failure. And so there's shame attached to that. So you want to withdraw. Then you're in a difficult situation, and people will say, well, so I remember like first business so I met this guy, John, who had like the perfect background to help me. And I remember going to talk to him, and a number of people who were close to me, who I respected very, very much and still respect to this day and have helped me immensely, all of them said, be careful what you share with this person. And I went down to meet with him and I said, forget that. I am going to bare my soul because I need this guy's help. And I was completely transparent with him in terms of the predicament that I was in, and what I believed I needed. And I asked for his help. Now, to caveat that, this was somebody who I had met him once before. I had a sense of his personality. I had a sense that I could trust him. He had the background of somebody who was trustworthy. Um, so there were a number of things as to why I was willing to trust him. But ultimately, I had to tell him the truth, and I had to tell him what help I needed from him. And to my surprise, he made me an offer to help me that to this day, I can't believe my luck. This guy, he was the former president of our largest competitor in the industry. Um, like we were this tiny little business, and he'd run this like massive business. Um, like, and he offered to help us at a price that at the time I was like, I remember going back to talk to my partners and saying, we got to hire this guy and we got to do this, but I don't know how we're going to pay him because it seemed like an enormous amount of money for us. But looking back on it, it was absolute peanuts relative to what he ended up doing for us.
Man,
So
that's awesome. Maybe some stars aligning, divine intervention, whatever. But man, I'm glad that worked out for you. And you'd mentioned like you've been working with a coach for a number of years since then, and I'm a huge fan and a huge believer in that. I just look at the best golfers in the world. What do they all have? Coaches. Look at the best,
yeah.
baseball players. I mean, what do they all have? Coaches. So whenever you become the best, it doesn't mean you don't get a coach anymore. I think we all need coaches.
100%. And I find that one of the interesting paradoxes, in that we all know, like, show me one professional athlete that has not had a coach of every moment of their professional career. We all know that this is something that is a requirement for success. At the same time, a lot of us, myself included, are very cautious and a little wary of engaging with coaches. And I just find it a very fascinating paradox and how why this is and how that happens.
Yeah,
I
no
suspect
doubt.
it's because the barrier to be, so part of the issue is the barrier to be a coach is very low. Like anybody can just say I'm a coach. And there's not necessarily any, there's that barrier. Whereas if you look at the coaches that these professional athletes hire, they're all coaches who have very good track records and have proof that they can do what they say they do. Like the coach of Phil Jackson, one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. Like he was employed by a professional team and there was proof that he could do the job. And so I think maybe it's that barrier to getting in that is not all coaches are created equal.
Yeah. And it's not even so much, I think there's a misconception that I go to a coach whenever I don't have the answers. And I think what's better in the way that I think about coaches and leverage folks in my network is more just to be challenged. Sometimes I kind of can get in my own rut or just be thinking, in a kind of a singular lane. But the value that I get from folks that I would consider coaches to me is, again, they have different experiences, different perspectives. They're seeing different things out in the market and the world. But then also just for me to share what I'm doing, what I'm thinking about, what I'm thinking for next steps, and to challenge me. There's been huge value that's come of that over the years for me.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Partnernomics Show. Don't forget to subscribe to get the newest episodes at thepartnernomicsshow.com.